My name is Afifa Nurul Shahidah.
Hello, my name is Anna Damayanti.
Hello, my name is Sally Noviana.
So I will explain about motivating introduction to stimulate interest. We can find sensitive issues in the global and local spheres, such as violence, politics, racism, torture, terrorism, religion, death, and others. For example, in social media like Instagram, we often see prohibition or warning notification if the thing that we see concerning with a sensitive issue. Sensitive issues are usually complicated. There are no easy answers. People often hold strong opinions based with their own experiences, interest, knowledge in sensitive issues. When we try to understand a sensitive topic, we are faced with the decision whether we should respond or not, and this can expand our knowledge of this increasingly complex world. Newspapers, magazines, or internet that cover sensitive issues, we have to understand how these points can become sensitive and why they are taught or brought up as topics. The topic becomes sensitive if emotional responses are raised. We can conclude that sensitive issues affect emotional condition. So, when we face a sensitive topic that is related or not with us, we understand it first and then respond with a clear mind without being emotionally affected. So, the title of this article that we will discuss is 10 Unexpected Facts About Saudi Arabia. If we see from the title, there's nothing strange about this article, but this topic is indirectly in conjunction with religion and that is including a sensitive issue.
Next, I will explain about the objectives. So, this study was conducted to increase in-depth understanding of the issues being discussed. For example, when we want to analyze sensitive issues, we have to know what is the impact if we raise certain topic. Analyzing sensitive issues also allows us to sort out which topics can be discussed. In other words, we have to be careful when discussing certain topic. In addition, an analysis of sensitive issues is carried out so that we can increase our sensitivity to related issues, because basically social research can contain something sensitive.
Arabia, or Kingdom of Saudi Arabia (KSA), is the most important Muslim country in the world. Saudi Arabia is a Muslim country in which Islamic law is strictly enforced. The kingdom is called the home of Islam because it is the birthplace, life, and die of Islamic prophet Muhammad. The role of Islam is very large in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is committed to implementing Islamic tradition in all aspects such as government and society. Islam not only guides and becomes the direction of people's lives, but also the policies and function of government.
Next, I'm going to present a content. So, for the example, now we have an article that demonstrates a sensitive issue on culture, which is indirectly in conjunction with religion. So, the title of the text is 10 Unexpected Facts About Saudi Arabia by Yura Lysenko, that is published in a website called Brainberries. So, before we continue, you can pause the video before we discuss on each paragraph. So, first paragraph. Do you see how the author narrates this text? When he says that it's a strange and controversial Middle Eastern country, it already gives a bad perception about Saudi Arabia. And then the author says, "Oh, you don't know the half of it." It makes us wonder, what is the half of it? Is it good? Is it bad? And then it says, you can see some basic human rights being violated right in front of your nose, especially when it comes to women's rights, which makes it even worse than the first perception. Second paragraph. From this paragraph, it seems really obvious that the author uses the pronoun they. which excludes himself from Saudi Arabia. Also, it compares the country to the Western world and assumes that Saudi Arabia seems barbaric for them. We probably notice the tendency of the author. Probably he's white or he's from the Western world. We don't know for sure. We just try to assume at first. And then point 1. Again, in this part, the author frames Islam as a religion that does not have the principle of toleration. Point 2. And in this part, the author frames Saudi Arabia and the Islamic values that they hold is very harsh, scary, and inhuman. The way he says perfect vacation is actually an irony to say that there is no use to spend your vacation in Saudi Arabia because they do not give what a vacation should be. And then point 3, in this part, the author implies that Saudi Arabia does not accept plurality in sexual orientation and expressions, that if we show it publicly, we may get more punishment that can put us to death. And then point 4, and the author pictures Saudi Arabia as a country that separates people according to their biological sex, which also implies that they don't let people identify themselves based on how they want to express themselves. And then point 5. The author constructs a stereotype about the woman and men there, and this one is a very sexist stereotype. The author implies that Saudi Arabian men are abusive or rough when he says that you lose a bit more than an expensive camera after intervening in their privacy. Point 6. In here, the author implies that Saudi Arabia still carry out punishments that violate human rights. Then point 7. In this part, he thinks that they are retarded because they still believe that there are still people who do magic because of the rules that forbid it. And by saying, welcome to the real world, the author implicitly says that Saudi Arabia is hallucinating. Point 8. The author tries to compare about men and women's rights in driving, also criticizing and picturing men as people who are capable of doing crazy and foolish things when he says tipping a car onto its side wheels. It also criticizes about men who have multiple freedom to drive while women are still banned. Point 9. This point implies that it's hard or rare to find fresh water in Saudi Arabia. That's why they raise the price because of a high demand but low sources. The writer gives an ironic and sarcastic statement by saying that if fresh water is still more expensive, they should probably start to drink oil. And then point 7, which is the last one. The author sees the things mentioned about as the only attraction discussed in the text. It's like it's the only good thing about Saudi Arabia, but at the same time he mentions how expensive it is, and it makes the attraction as an exclusive attraction. And the author does not live in it. That's why the text is biased and subjective, since the text only talks about Saudi Arabia in his particular viewpoint. He encodes the message from his viewpoint only. Can he represent the Saudi Arabian people when he writes the text? He's not even from Saudi Arabia. According to O'Shaughnessy, the narratives about ethnicity perpetuate the idea of fundamental white and non-white difference, such as if they're white, they're civilized, sophisticated, rational, scientific, and good, and if they're non-white, they're primitive, savage, irrational, magical, and evil. This author conveys a dominant and racist ideological attitudes. In analyzing an article that demonstrates a sensitive issue on culture which is indirectly in conjunction with religion, we can use Stuart Hall's encoding-decoding theory. He argues that 1. Meaning is not simply fixed or determined by the sender. 2. The message is never transparent. And 3. The audience is not a passive recipient of meaning. By understanding the encoding-decoding theory, we try to reconstruct the idea by giving meanings through symbols and by interpreting the message as a whole, and try to interpret and translate the coded information into a comprehensible form. Hall identifies 3 positions from which the codings of a discourse may be constructed. First one is the dominant and hegemonic. It is when the viewer takes the connoted meaning fully and straightly from the text, and decodes the message in terms of the references code in which it has been encoded. We might say that the viewer is operating inside dominant code. The next one is the negotiated. It is when the reader, to a certain extent, shares the text code and generally accepts the preferred meaning, but it is simultaneously resisting and modifying it in a way which reflects their own experiences and interests. And the third one is the oppositional. This means that a person recognizes that their meaning is not the dominant meaning or what was intended, but alters the message in their mind to fit an alternative framework of reference. So we can use those methods to analyze sensitive text to prevent us from getting emotionally affected by the content of the text.